Okay, so welcome to Interpreting Lab Results. We appreciate you coming today. And hopefully, has anybody been to this session before? Okay, good. This is the third time I've done this session at the conference. Feeling a little more comfortable here. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Sande Pence. I'm a supervisor with the County of San Diego, CUPA. And I've been doing this for about 18 years now. I started off doing inspections for about 10 years. I was a training coordinator for about 4 years. And then I became a supervisor. During that time frame, I was on the hazmat team for about 6 years. And I did most of my years, 15 of them in Riverside County, working for the CUPA. And then I had a change and needed to move to San Diego County. So I was lucky enough to be able to work for San Diego County CUPA, and I've been there for almost 5 years now. I started off in the tank inspection group, and now I'm supervising field staff again in the CUPA program. I've been designated as the APSA technical lead, so maybe if some of you went to that APSA session earlier. And here with me today is a special guest. Her name is Patty Mata. And she has over 25 years of experience as a project manager. She works for our contract laboratory in San Diego County, TestAmerica. And she is pretty much knows lab testing. She supervises people who do lab testing. She takes in our samples. If we didn't tell her the right thing on our chain of custody, she'll give us a call and say, well, did you mean to do STLC on that? So 25 years in the industry, and so here's your opportunity to ask someone who's an expert on lab testing any of your questions, and I hope you will do that today. So that is Patty Mata.
Hello,
she will
everybody.
be assisting me with this presentation today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. There's our information, and at the end, you're welcome to come on up. I have my business cards with me, and of course, Patty's email is here. You can always send me an email if you missed this, but it's in your handouts as well, our emails. Okay, so let's test out our clickers, our audio response software. Here's the first question, and so when I click on this little polling thing in the lower corner, it's going to get us started. So it's going to capture your last answer. You don't have to click send. You just push the button as to your answer related to the number and let go of it, and it will put your answer in, and we'll see what our audience consists of today. All right. Oh, I already messed it up. Okay. There we go. All right. Little elevator music for you to enjoy. And the songs change, too. Yes. Great. 50 responses so far. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so our results show that we have 46% of our audience is a regulator, 4% are consultants, business owners, 32%, that's a good number, and other. What's an example of someone who's an other? Tell me what you do.
San Diego National Labs, California, we're co-government owned, contractor operated.
Okay. Great. That works. Okay. Alrighty.
But we manage the waste programs.
Okay, so you don't quite fit into any of my categories there. Alrighty, and then tell me your level of experience. Oh, 55 responses. Good. Okay, you're figuring this out. Good. Okay. All right. So 66% of you has some experience with reading and interpreting lab results. 21%, not a lot of experience. 13% says you can teach the class. Awesome. Please sign up. Yes, this would be great. Okay, good. And I really am glad to have a varied audience. I think it really makes for a good class. And I would really hope that you'll take the opportunity to ask some questions. Okay, so getting started here, really quickly, at the end we are going to have a quiz, and we're not going to use the clickers. You're going to have to tell me your answers. So, but I do have candy for those of you who want a little bit of chocolate or a caramel. So we are going to have a quiz at the end. And the evaluations are online for this class. We really would like to hear your feedback. So, and there's some paper copies back there as well. Okay, so why are interpreting lab results important? Really, it's what we do as CUPA inspectors, Unified Program inspectors doing hazardous waste generator inspections, and as a business. And I'm gonna keep repeating this over and over again today, that the generator makes the waste determination. That's really important concept for, and you all know that, right? That's kind of like CUPA 101. But sometimes we forget that as we get going in what we're doing. So I will come back to that as well. Remembering limitations, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those limitations today. There's sample error, there's, if you were in the class before this, there's bias samples, and interpreting those results. I had a recent case where I took one sample. It was this fiberglass debris from a company that makes antennas. So they've been sanding off this fiberglass, extra sharp edges on these antennas made of resins. And they have this dust just all over the place in the back of their facility. It was very poor housekeeping. And they've been putting this stuff in the trash. And I figured, well, it's probably fiberglass. It probably is, I don't think that would have anything. So I went ahead and took the sample, and it ended up coming up high in lead. But it wasn't super high, but it was over the threshold. And they went with it, and they cleaned up the whole facility. It was a good outcome. But they now are basing their whole program on that one sample that I took. And my boss, during the enforcement discussion, talked to them about it, and it turns out that there was a ceramics company that was there for 30 years before they started there, and they've been there for about maybe 20 years. So he kind of was like encouraging this company, well, you might want to take a few more samples because maybe there was something on the ground, or probably not, but it's just something to think about as you're looking at these lab results and really looking at what they represent. We're going to review terminology today. I think it's really important to know what the lab report means. As a new CUPA inspector, I can remember getting this big stack of lab results and just going, oh, great, what is this? What does all these numbers mean? And then how many of you, I know there's quite a few inspectors in the audience, you take maybe a facility shows you some results from a test that they have done, because you ask them, well, what's that waste stream? Have you ever tested it? They say, oh yeah, here you go, here's the results. Oh, I don't know what it means, but I don't think it's hazardous, or whatever the case may be. And they're asking for your guidance in reviewing those results and interpreting that data. And then, of course, as a facility owner, you're trying to test your waste, and you get back this big stack of papers, and it's like, oh boy, what am I looking at here? So hopefully, when you leave this class today, you'll have a little more knowledge, and Patty's going to fill you in on some of the terminology. Figuring out what tests to be done. You may run a test for metals on some kind of a corrosive waste. So yeah, there's no metals in it, but it might be corrosive. It may be considered hazardous based on its corrosive characteristics. So making sure you're running the right tests. And then, of course, interpreting the results. What do they mean? Some special considerations. I'm going to talk a little bit about exclusions. This isn't a hazardous waste advanced inspector. That's on a different day. But there are some things that kind of have messed me up in my career where I think I have it all figured out, and then someone goes, oh, well, no, there's a contained in policy, or, oh, no, there's a section that excludes that. It's like, well, the lab result says it's hazardous. Well, it's not a waste, or whatever it may be. And then hopefully the way I learn, one of the ways I learn is from my mistakes. So I'm going to share with you a few of the things I've experienced through my 18 years where I've thought I had it figured out, and I learned from that mistake, and hopefully you'll benefit from that. We do have a few quizzes. Now, I tried not to put the answers to the questions on your slide notes. Hopefully I turned in the right one. So just so you know, if you want to follow along and fill in the answers, I will give you the right answers. I'm just reminding you. You don't have to, but just in case you want to, just remember to do that. And we're going to use the clickers for that. So I've already talked a little bit about this. When is it necessary to interpret lab results? From my perspective as a CUPA inspector, it's when I'm reviewing the generator's waste determination. During that inspection, I'm making sure that they've made the right choice in how they're managing that hazardous or non-hazardous waste stream. There are some facilities that are required to do a waste analysis plan. Can anybody tell me an example of a facility that has to do a waste analysis plan? Treatment, storage, and disposal facility, permit by rule facility, very good, okay. So, and you'll hear people say, oh, well, they don't have to sample, they can use knowledge of process, and that is true, but there are a few facilities that are required to do waste analysis. And then, of course, investigation in doing our CUPA inspections. We do collect our own samples at times. We talked in the last class about authoritative sampling that a CUPA inspector might be doing. And then oversight of remediation. There may be a few remediation people in the audience. So in looking and overseeing if somebody has, say, dug a big enough hole to clean out that contamination, you might look at those results to determine if everything's done. Some of the limitations, I'm going to say this over and over again, is remembering that waste determination is the generator's responsibility. So you may have that biased authoritative sample that I took a few weeks ago at the antenna manufacturer, and if that generator would have had data put together and MSDSs for all of their sanding materials and their resins, and maybe they did some sampling on their own of that stuff, and that's why they were just putting it in the trash, and they were confident with that waste determination, my one authoritative sample may not have held any weight. And so that's something to remember when you're interpreting and looking at lab results. The other thing to remember, and this is not necessarily a limitation, but in some ways it is. And what I have happen, and some facilities, you just have to know so much. You have so many rules that apply to you, and you really look to the regulatory agency to tell you if your waste is hazardous or not. That's something that, as a CUPA, we do not have the authority to concur with your waste determination. We cannot say, this waste is not a hazardous waste. We don't have that authority. Only DTSC would have the authority to make that concurrence with your waste determination. Now, I've written lots of violations for not conducting a waste determination, and then a facility has turned in some kind of sample results, and I looked at them and said, okay, it looks like they did it, and then I've said, okay, you've returned to compliance, but I didn't say, I concur with your hazardous waste determination. As a CUPA, I do not have that authority. And then as far as remediation, obviously that has to be authorized by DTSC or the State Water Resources Control Board for remediation oversight. CUPAs have to be certified specifically for that remediation oversight. All right. And I already mentioned this, authoritative sampling, and in the last class, we do authoritative sampling, and then of course the facility would do representative sampling. What is usually involved with representative sampling? Can anybody tell me? As far as the number of samples. Who was in the last class? You would take multiple samples, right? Typically at least 4 samples, maybe more depending on what you have, right? That's expensive to take a lot of samples. As a CUPA, we don't have a lot of resources in that area to go out and take multiple representative samples, and there's a lot of work involved in identifying where those samples should be taken. You really have to know a lot about your own process to be able to determine how to take those representative samples. As from a CUPA inspector's perspective, it's just not practical for us to take representative samples when we're just verifying your waste determination. So that's one of the things that was mentioned in the last class was data quality objectives. We have a different objective than a generator does. We're really just trying to make sure you did a generator did a valid waste determination, and so we're going to just take as little samples as necessary, and we're going to take, obviously, if I see a spill on the ground or if I see something dumped into the trash, I'm going to go right to the worst spot of that thing that's in the trash and collect a sample there in order to run that sample and determine what it comes out. But on that point, it's really important to know about the source. And that's why we ask a lot of questions during our inspections to find out, well, what was that put in the trash? So we can figure out what analysis we would need to run on that. And we could be limited if we really don't know what got put into the trash. We might not know what to test for. So we do have some field instruments like pH paper and things like that we might do some preliminary field testing, and then we can get a better idea of what sample analysis we're going to run. And then obviously there's mistakes we make during sampling, contamination. Most people know they need to wear gloves, but do you know you need to change gloves during sampling? That's something to keep in mind. You don't want to contaminate your samples. You didn't pick the right analysis to run. And then obviously labs make mistakes sometimes too, although not Patty. Patty doesn't make mistakes, but they're human, so it does happen. And then I already mentioned the exclusions and exemptions. All right, so here's our first question. Okay, so and I know I haven't really given you the definition yet, but the purpose of this is to kind of get you thinking, so don't feel bad if you get it wrong. Give me your best guess here. And then by the end of this class, you'll know the answer if you don't know the answer already. Okay? So what does TCLP stand for? Okay. And some people call it T-clip. Okay, well, 48% of you were correct. The green line there, toxicity characteristic leaching procedure. I get messed up on that too. So number 2 is the correct answer. All right. Okay, I got another one here for you. This is to keep you awake. Okay. What does STLC stand for? Oh, very good. Everybody's paying attention. We have 57 responses. Thank you. All right. Oh, 54% got it right. Good job. Soluble threshold limit concentration is the correct answer. Okay. All right, here's another one. What does WET stand for? W-E-T. You're waking up. Good. Okay, 86% got that one right. Waste extraction test. Excellent. Okay, a couple more here. All right. This one's a little tricky too. Okay, what does TTLC stand for? Responses. Good. Okay. Great. Excellent. Okay, total threshold limit concentration, you got it right? Okay. All right, one last one for this part. What does AA and ICP stand for in environmental testing laboratory? Oh, sorry, that kind of blocks it there. That says inductively coupled plasma. Okay, good. All right, well, Patty's going to talk to you a little bit about this. The answer is number 3, atomic absorption and inductively coupled plasma. So that's a great segue into this next part where Patty's going to talk to you about what these machines do.
Well, atomic absorption spectroscopy, it's a metals analysis instrument, and it's not as advanced as ICP is, but it's still used. It's used for graphite furnace, and it's also used for mercury analysis. This instrument is specifically designed to take metals that are in solution. It draws it into the equipment. It can either be aspirated into a flame then, or it can be in a little graphite furnace tube, or it can actually be a gaseous state like we do for mercury. And there's a light on one side and a detector on the other, and it sees how much absorbs. And it's based strictly on how much of that compound is in there. There's interferences that happen. It's not a perfect piece of equipment, but it's very good for mercury, and it's good for things like organic lead analysis also. Then you've got ICP. You have inductively coupled plasma, and then you have ICP-MS. Both of these pieces of equipment give you multiple metals per run. The AA can give you 1 metal per run. This one will do like 20 metals or 25 metals or 30 metals at a time, depending how you have them set up. Again, it's metals in solution, and it's got a detector in there. It puts it into this extremely hot plasma, and then you get your detector. Again, interferences happen. There's software to deal with it, but interferences can happen. And ICP-MS has an additional detector in there to help deal with the interferences, and it also gives you lower detection limits. So if you've got some kind of interference at your site and you need to see lower detection limits, or if you're looking for drinking water quality type material, this is the piece of equipment you're going to want to have your samples run by. There's multiple methods for each of these, but just let us know what you need. If you need lower limits, just tell your lab, what's the lowest limit you can get for me and what piece of equipment and what method, and then we'll follow it.
Okay. Any questions? Oh, questions. Might have to turn it on. Hold on one moment if we could just...
Gonna have Vanna run up.
Okay. Maybe, so what? Oh.
See, I don't know.
Okay. Typically, when you are looking for an environmental laboratories typically specialize in certain types of matrices.
Mm-hmm.
They may specialize in soil analysis, or water analysis, or sludges, or just different types of matrices. What types of questions do we as generators need to ask of our laboratories to ensure that if we don't tell them a method, and a lot of times we'll just tell them the goal of the testing. We want to confirm that it's a hazardous waste or whatever. So we don't say, I want method EPA 1311. Some of us do, but most of us don't. We just shoot it to the lab and we say we want to run this test or this test. And so we may not understand what matrix interferences will be with our the matrix of our sample. We may not also understand the detection limits and the ranges. So for example, there may be a sample with gross contamination, so you're at the higher ranges of the instruments, or like you were indicating, you have a water sample and you're at the lower detection range. So really what I'm trying to ask is, what kinds of questions do we need to ask so that we can work with the labs to ferret out that kind of information?
Well, telling me your goal is going to be the most important thing. This is hazardous waste, or we're determining it to see if it is hazardous waste. That's the most important thing, because then I can start making some decisions and asking you some questions. One of the things I might ask you, though, is what's the primary constituent in here? Do I have something that I have to worry about interferences with? If you're telling me this is drinking water, I need to know that, because it's going to be handled differently than hazardous waste determination. And then you need to let me know if you've had prior analysis and if you've had any issues with it before. So just asking, can you meet the hazardous waste criteria limits, and let me know if this is hazardous waste or not, based on this is what I've got. So you have generator knowledge, you know what's in there, or you have a good idea what's in there. Telling me that and letting me know what your goal is the most important thing.
Okay.
Okay, on the AA, the results are given in what units?
Depends on what type of matrix.
Okay, for metals?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
soil?
For
Metals
soil,
and soil.
yeah,
Just
it's
milligram?
milligram per kilogram normally.
How about ICP-MS?
Same thing, we can change the units based on what you need. We can report it microgram per kilogram, milligram per kilogram, percent by weight. You know, our LIMS system, our laboratory information management system will report it in whatever you want.
Okay,
So it
thank
doesn't
you.
matter.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so, yeah, have you guys seen this before? This big page of all these numbers and all these acronyms, and you're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Where in the world are my sample results? Which column are the sample results? What is an analyte? What are the reporting units? What is a data qualifier? Dilution factor, what does that mean? So we're going to talk about some of these things, and hopefully you won't be scared anymore after the end of this class. Okay. And hopefully you'll be able to figure out what some of these things mean. And you'll have your class notes to refer back, and you'll even have Patty's phone number. You could call her. She's very helpful. So figuring out what is the allowable holding time? How do you find out what the allowable holding time is? And what does sample preservation mean? Does it mean more than just putting a sample in an ice chest? Or, are there more things that you would need to do? We'll talk about that. And why do you have to keep all these pages of quality control data? Why can't I just keep the top sheet with the results? Can I just throw the rest away? We'll talk a little bit about that and why that might not be such a good idea. Data qualifier, matrix spike duplicate. That's one of my favorite terms. I was so glad Patty explained it all. You're gonna really enjoy it. Okay, so people asked about methods. We're going to talk about that. Here we go. So getting started, one of the basic things, you get the lab results, and this could be a business owner, a consultant, a CUPA inspector, a participating agency inspector, a regulatory inspector in general. The first things that you should look at when you're looking at that lab report, number one is to make sure you have all the pages in the report, because there could be some pages that are missing that might give you important information that you need to know for that sample. Also, having that chain of custody is important, and usually, at least for our results, that's the very last page, the chain of custody that the laboratory received, showing that that sample arrived at the laboratory intact. And what was asked for when that sample was sent to the lab.